Welcome everyone. It's wonderful to see such a great turnout tonight. Onsite Gallery is the largest and most visible of the 9 galleries that we have across the university. And it's my pleasure to be relatively new to the university to guide the gallery system, as we call it, towards a new future. One of the things that we're planning to do coming up this spring, for example, is our first ever OCAD gallery crawl, where we'll have all the exhibitions open and invite the public to see everything that we have on a particular Saturday afternoon in March. But the OCAD, the Onsite Gallery rather, is kind of our public-facing gallery. It's the professional gallery where we bring in designers, artists, curators, researchers into the university to create exhibitions that are also then for the public. And while the artists and creators are here, we try and make as many direct engagements as we can with our students, with our faculty, with our curriculum, to really enrich the educational experience for everyone here. We also present a number of public programs that are always free to the public through the run of any given exhibition. And so I encourage you to check our website to look at the upcoming programs associated with the Sunshine Eaters, which includes obviously tonight's artist talks, but also talks coming up with Sherry Boyle, Tony Matelli, and Brian Young, and other artists in the exhibition. In a couple of weeks, we'll also be presenting a special talk by Mark Mayer, the Director and CEO of the National Gallery of Canada. That will be coming up on Wednesday, January 24th in this room. And Mark will be discussing the reinstallation of the Canadian and Indigenous galleries at the National Gallery and what that means for how art history is now being understood in Canada. And we are pleased that Sarah Milroy, the art critic and curator, will be moderating the question and answer period for that. So that's in 2 weeks on January 24th. It's now my great pleasure to introduce my very dear colleague, Lisa Deanne Smith, who has been with Onsite Gallery pretty much since the beginning, right? And is an OCAD graduate herself, and someone that has worked very hard to bring the gallery to where it is today. And we're really seeing the first show that she's been able to work on in a much bigger scale in our bigger gallery, and we're all super proud of the result. Lisa is an artist herself, and she's also a curator, a writer, and an organizer of community events that explore voice, experience, and power. Some of her curatorial projects include the Sunshine Eaters, exhibitions including Objects for Listening by Cheryl Pope, Ads for People, Selling Ethics in the Digital Age, and I Wonder, an exhibition by Marion Badkes. She previously had positions at YYZ Artists Outlet, Gallery 44, and the Association of Independent Video and Filmmakers. She's been doing some independent writing recently as well, and she's had exhibitions of her work at White Columns in New York, the New Museum, also in New York, and Mercer Union in Toronto. She holds a Master of Fine Arts from Cranbrook Academy of Art, and of course her AOCA from OCAD University. And please welcome Lisa Deanne Smith to the stage.
Welcome everyone. It's a great pleasure to see the auditorium full and to feel the excitement for these incredible artists and designers that we've brought together for the Sunshine Eaters. And of course we're really excited to have Ebony G. Patterson and Nick Cave in conversation in a few minutes. I really do encourage you and hope you can join us after this talk for the Sunshine Eaters reception at 199 Richmond Street West. At the end of the talk, we'll actually put a map up, so you know if anyone needs help getting there, you can kind of visualize that. The Sunshine Eaters is an exhibition that I have been working on for a long time. I think it felt really important at this current time in the world, when there's so many different types of crises going on, financial crises, ecological crises, personal crises, crises of race, that it felt like a good moment to search out and look to artists and designers that conjure hope. The full exhibition was inspired by Alanis Obama-Swan's film Trick or Treaty, and it was particularly inspired by the young Cree teenagers that walked with an older guide from northern Quebec to Ottawa in support of Idle No More and Chief Teresa Spence. They did a 69-day walk from January through till March. And when I watched that on her film, it really showed me that being on the land, having experiential knowledge, and really giving a different type of knowledge than what is often prefaced in our educational institutions or in our culture in general, really more so in some ways, needs to be explored. And so it was really, I started to look to, actually I automatically thought about Nick after that, so, and really looked for artists that I feel are smart and thoughtful in many different ways, and all of them have looked to the land, plants, flowers, and trees as a way to conjure hope. All of their crises that they may be responding to directly or indirectly are very different. There's very many different stories. So please come. You can pick up a brochure and read a little bit more. We have quite a few events. I would like to mention that we are actually bringing in the original Treaty Number 9 and the original Daniel McMartin Diaries in an event with Alanis Obama-Swan and Jesse Wente. But please visit our website. Now I would like to let you know how we're going to handle the next half an hour, 40 minutes. We'll be looking at a video of a project from Nick Cave called Here Here that was done in Michigan at Cranbrook Museum and throughout Detroit. Ebony will come up and talk for about 3 minutes and then show a new work that she's working on that I'm really excited for us to be able to share that with you. And then we'll sit down for a conversation, and after that we'll open up to the floor. So first, before we put on Nick's video, I would like to, actually I'd like to have it very quick. I'd like to introduce Nick. So Nick Cave, who we're so excited to bring into our community, is an artist, educator, and foremost a messenger, working between the visual and performing arts through a wide range of mediums, including sculpture, installation, video, sound, and performance. Cave exhibits internationally and recently presented a massive, immersive installation titled Until at MassMocha, Massachusetts. His works are in many collections, including the Museum of Modern Art and the Smithsonian. Nick Cave is represented by Jack Shaman Gallery in New York. Let's watch the video.
Okay, phone. Obviously sideways, I think, to not get that flat thing. So definitely fine.
The higher your knees come, the less you're going to step on the raffia.
Okay.
And you're going to. So don't wig out when that happens.
Okay.
It's okay. They're performance suits.
I know.
You don't have to go super fast for it to look really beautiful either.
Yeah. Okay. Let's not try to like crazy run.
You don't have to. We just ran. You can do the other thing.
Yeah.
A little trot.
Let's do a trot with the gray. Okay. Okay.
You know, there's a ratio under.
I know, you're trying to.
You want me to button it or just put it on your head?
Button.
So I'm gonna move like this. You want the yellow on the front.
Yeah.
You can't breathe.
I'll hold it up until, we're at a point where,
Okay.
because I love
It looks great. It looks really great.
That's good. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Probably one just in the air. It's gonna work together. 3, 2, 1, go.
He thinks he's Diana Ross. So can we either use those crates to put the mannequin on top of, something to put everything on top of? Build the whole thing first.
Okay, so we're gonna have, do I need to have this on?
Yeah.
Taking a photo?
Keep going, dude. Yeah, I know. I would. I'm sorry.
I like that.
Is that this one? Let it in the back.
That's okay. Slight turn.
What do you envision, shape-wise or movement-wise?
I think what they're gonna do is we'll just stack it first. And then we're up here, you might as well be moving, you click it.
Yeah.
Done.
Thank you, Nick, for that. The title is so poignant, Here, as in H-E-R, H-E-R, H-E-A-R. Is that in the right order too?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something to think about. So I would like to bring Ebony G. Patterson up. We're really excited. I'll introduce her first. Jamaican-born artist, Ebony G. Patterson works employ opulent surfaces and brightly colored patterns to seduce the viewer into confronting the profound social realities contained at their core. Often addressing the use of feminine gendered adornment in the construct of urban masculinity within popular culture, Patterson embellishes photographic tapestries by hand with beading, sequins, fabric, and jewelry. Patterson's aesthetic pulls the viewer in and forces them to bear witness to problematic social conflicts experienced by her subjects. Her works command the viewer to look past the facade of the rich formal characteristics of the fabricated fantasies increasingly traded in our consumer and social media-centric culture, and to acknowledge the realities of those not touched by the glitter and gold. The paradoxical means the artist uses to convey this message only emphasizes its urgency and weight. Patterson has had solo exhibitions and projects at many U.S. institutions, including the Studio Museum in Harlem, New York, Atlantic Center for Contemporary Art in Georgia, Museum of Art and Design, New York, and SCAD Museum of Art in Savannah, Georgia. In 2018, Patterson will have a large-scale solo exhibition at Perez Art Museum in Miami. She is represented by Monique Malage Gallery in Chicago. So thank you, Ebony, if you'd like to come up.
Hi, everyone. So first, I want to acknowledge the presence of one of my teachers from undergrad. So I went to art school at the only art school in the English-speaking Caribbean. It's based in Kingston, Jamaica, called the Edna Manley College of Visual and Performing Arts. And one of my undergraduate professors, Natalie Butler Chang, is in the audience. And I just want to say, Natalie, thank you for everything that you have given me. After Lisa spoke, I think she just said everything so eloquently. There's nothing more for me to really say. I was going to show you a couple of images that kind of contextualizes the work that's in the show. And then the video that I'm going to share at the end is called Three Kings Weep. And I think in many ways it kind of encapsulates a lot of the ideas that I've been examining for like the last, I guess almost 7 to 8 years. And actually the last work, oh no, hold on, Lisa, this is the long one. Yeah, this is not the short one. Yeah. Right, and the Three Kings Weep project, actually, this is the first time I'm going to be showing or sharing this really publicly. It's intended to be viewed officially later on this year at the exhibition I'm having at the Perez. So one of the ongoing concerns I have in my work has a lot to do with ideas around visibility and invisibility or on visibility. And what it means for people who come from spaces that are deemed invisible or invisible to use tools of dress to declare a sense of presence. What does it mean for people in post-colonial spaces or society because of racial hierarchy or social hierarchical structures to be deemed unworthy of acknowledgement simply because of the color of their skin or their social standing? And how does dress essentially become a tool for advocating not just presence, but also dignity as a way of saying, I am here. A lot of my work also deals with ideas around violence and memorialization. And so in many ways, I see the ongoing, the work that I've been doing in many ways over the last several years as a kind of memorial. Well, I feel like we should just skip past and go to the video now. It's fine. Right, so in many ways the works kind of exist as a kind of memorial or tribute to voices that are not allowed to hold space, hold presence, and hold weight. And I see it as a kind of responsibility of mine as an artist to use my ability or my position of access to an audience like this to talk about people who don't have the same kind of access. In the video, Three Kings Week, you will see three young men who will sit and they'll share something that is incredibly vulnerable, incredibly naked, but then at the same time, it demands something, and you will determine what that is. So Lisa is. And then I'll ask to kill the lights. Thanks.
Kill the lights first. Oh, yeah. Can you get the lights back?
Lights. Lights.
Thank you. No, all the way. All the way.
Lights.
If we must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and penned in an inglorious spot, while around us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our accursed lot. must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain. Then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us through dead. Oh, kinsmen, we must meet the common foe. Though far outnumbered, let us show us brave. And for their 1,000 blows, deal one death blow. What though before us lies the open grave? Like men will face the murderous, cowardly path, pressed to the wall, dying but fighting back.
for sharing that with us, Ebony. That was an extremely powerful, moving piece. Thank you. I'd like to invite you both now up to the table, and we'll have a conversation. And Ryan, can you help us with the lights a little bit more? A little speech. I felt that work in my body watching that work. I mean, it's one of the interesting things, I think, in all of the works in the exhibition, and in particular in both of your works, is the use of the body. And then in combination with the idea of, bodies in specific places and their contexts around that. And I'm wondering if you each can talk a little bit about how you conjure hope, per se, within the context that you're working in. And I feel like both of your work has given me a lot of that, so I'm wondering how you think about that, or Nick, maybe I'll start with you, and you often reference a dreamlike state and that kind of place where you're providing that context for viewers.
Hi. And Happy New Year. The body, for me, the body is no more than, it's sort of the center. It's the vehicle for the most part, and it's the vessel that sort of, through this process, creates this sort of output. And so it's the thing that I use to deliver the deed. I mean, I think that's sort of how I'm able to do what I do, is that's the most important factor. And so I'm sort of given, I feel like I have this sort of free pass to be an artist when I'm not. That's not my priority. So.
And the idea of conjuring hope for yourself in the face of things that are uncomfortable for you within our society.
I think the fact that I can sort of be the voice for many people, that I have the ability and capability of putting things out into the world for there to be larger conversation. I think that is hope. Just the capability of being able to see, that was hope right there. I don't know if I really think about it like that. I don't want, none of that matters. What matters is that I'm like an artist with a civic responsibility in working at this space of consciousness, and it's tough, but it's everything at the same time. So it's not that, I don't know if when I'm sort of designing or sort of thinking about the work, I don't know. I don't think I know what hope is until I see it. So the work is, I don't draw or sketch anything. It's just I'm just making shit. And through that process, I'm sort of very open to failure and sort of attracted to fear and just willing to sort of fall into the abyss of it all. And I think through that process, somehow it takes care of itself. It does the work that needs to be done. I just deliver it and then I walk away, and I'm not responsible from that point forward.
Ebony, do you want to maybe build on that a bit in the idea of civic responsibility or
Yeah, I mean, I think, so like I was, like very typical, like much younger artist, because I'm still young, yeah. In this, and especially a much younger artist who's, who's living in a femme body, and I'm really interested in like conversations around the autobiography, like many, like young artists in art school trying to figure this shit out. And then after doing a bunch of things about my body, my vagina, my breasts, was like, who's gonna care about my vagina, Do I wanna keep looking at images of my own vagina anyway? And actually, so a lot of the earlier work that work was kind of mobilized by these ideas around the grotesque and beauty, and then I come across this really interesting article back home about gangsters, criminals using skin lightening products as a way of eluding the police. So they were lightening their skins to distort their appearance. So, like skin bleaching is this incredibly, it's an incredibly grotesque practice. It's certainly not a new phenomenon. You flip through any Ebony magazine during the 60s next to advertisements for Concoline, and you'll see advertisements for skin bleaching creams. But what was really interesting to me was that, like all of this was kind of happening when the trend metrosexuality was really popular. So here it is, you had macho bodies kind of reimagining what it meant to be masculine, but using the feminine lens to do that. And then especially within the context of Jamaica being this incredibly, like being very homophobic. What does it mean then to use these feminine tropes on these like macho stereotypes to kind of reimagine what it means to be male? And so seeing this article, and because of my interest autobiographically in the body and the grotesque at the time, that kind of like led me to this place. So first I was looking at things from the point of beauty. But then as my practice continued to evolve, and I really started to think about the relationship, the kind of racial hierarchies even further, as it relates especially to colorism. That the idea that somehow being lighter meant that you were more beautiful, but not only more beautiful, but that somehow certain privileges were allotted to you because of the lightness of your skin. And what did it mean for people who were doing this practice, who were predominantly working class people in disenfranchised communities, kind of taking using these creams as a way of erasing themselves into present. So thinking about the cream in many ways, or the act of erasure of one's skin tonality to have acknowledgement was such a powerful way of reading or thinking about people who were carrying out this act. And then also thinking about the substance of the cream also too, in relationship to material or materiality, material culture, especially as it relates to like bling culture, right? So if you think about, like, say for example, when the term bling bling became really popular, it was Lil Wayne who kind of popularized that term, right? And that's kind of like also an interesting moment when the idea of shine and prettiness was also happening on the black male body in a way that it wasn't happening, say for example, in the 90s. Right? So, and then from there, the language of bling no longer was just associated with things that shine. It was just things that made, like made you visible. So maybe it's the fact that you have you have that really expensive bottle of liquor, or you have like a car that just looks different. That's as much bling as it is something that's highly embellished and is around your neck, in the same way that one doing that sense of erasure also brings a sense of illumination. So I was really interested in the way that people were using these tools, using tools that are associated with fashion, but then at the same time, it's also pageantry was also somehow intersecting on these bodies as a way of claiming acknowledgement. There's a practice in a lot of working class communities, a growing practice called a bling funeral. It's kind of like an academic term. It's not really a legitimate term, but in a lot of working class communities, if there is a community marching band, people will hire the band, or they'll hire a sound system to play at a funeral. And so what happens is these funerals take on almost like a stately structure, so people show up, dressed to the nine. They will dress considering the person who has passed on. They will play music that the person who had passed on really loved, or and they'll make they'll make customized coffins. And I remember reading an interview that was done by Donna Hope Marquis, who I kind of see described as a cultural anthropologist in Jamaica. She interviewed this woman who was going, ever so often she was paying down on a customized coffin. Like, she had planned what her funeral was going to be, what kind of hymns were going to be sung, and everything. And what she said was, the woman who she interviewed, she said, they may not have noticed me when I was alive, but they will damn well notice me before I leave. And I thought, like, what an amazing way of asserting one's presence, even after death. That you understand that because of where you were born and the shade of your skin, that somehow it was not going to guarantee you any sense of visibility. But when you leave this last moment of celebration, you're going home, you are going to make sure that you control how that was seen, how you were seen, and fuck everybody else on the way out. And I think that, every time when I make work, that's the place that I'm making it from. And that's the sense of responsibility that I feel that I have. I mean, I was fortunate to have grown up in a middle class circumstance, but my parents both grew up in deep rural poverty, and made sure that as I was growing up, that I was constantly reminded of where we came from, and the sense of responsibility that I have going forward. And then also too, I just think, like, as an artist, that's what I'm supposed to do. I never get it when people say, when my colleagues sometimes, or young artists who I may be teaching, will say, like, well, I'm not a political artist. Well, what the fuck does that mean? Because the truth is, the fact that you're an artist is a political act, whether you are making work that is kind of grounded in social discourse or not, your very presence is a pushback. And so if you have that platform, and I'm not knocking anybody who doesn't engage in social discourse. That's okay too. There's a place for that. But that's why I make what I make, and I feel very excited by it, and I think that's really important.
Nick, thinking about your work and riffing off of Ebony's description of illuminating people. I feel like your process is a lot about illuminating people and providing platforms through the public art and the larger projects. How do you see that, or where are you coming from on that?
Illuminating people.
Can you maybe talk about your excitement within those projects?
I think, you know, the excitement within those projects is not, you know, for me, it's really sort of providing a platform for people. You know, I'm willing to sort of, well, what tends to be the way that I work is that I'll bring a project to a city, and then hire the city to build a project. And that's really where probably of everything that I do, that's probably the most rewarding part of my work, is working within these spaces, places that I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I know what the outcome is going to be, but the process of getting there is really sort of the most extraordinary moment. And that's not what you see as a viewer. And so, and you know, this idea of introducing the community back to itself is what I'm finding to be so intriguing, is that, you know, we live in these communities and yet we don't know that we live next door to each other, you know, creative people. And to be able to sort of, you know, get in the trenches and ask yourself, who's here, who lives here, is really sort of magical, to be able to sort of be in the field working and sort of discovering, you know, these amazing talents that are everywhere. And to be, again, to provide a sort of platform to what is possible.
Yeah, I mean,
that is the sort of, that's that sort of reflection, the sort of glow, the light.
watching the videos, I mean, this was captured some of that, and the one that you recently did in just outside of New Orleans. That project was amazing. I'm wondering if you have a question for each other, if there's something that Ebony you might want to ask I gave a little heads up in an email. And that's fine either way.
I just want, you know, you to talk to me about fashion. Yeah.
What about fashion?
What about it?
Okay.
What does that mean to you?
Okay, I'm gonna do this back to you. So yeah, you know, I guess like, well, this is an ongoing curiosity, I guess, or a question that comes up from time to time with the work. So I guess, you know, like fashion, I don't know if it's fashion as much as it is. Well, no, it is fashion. It's definitely not style. Because style is what's trendy as opposed to fashion becomes personalized. And so in the, you know, like the way I use clothing or dress, it's all about it's a moment of celebration that kind of happens on the body. But it's also projection of individuality. Within my work, especially the photo-based work, everything starts with a tailor. So all the outfits are custom made for every shoot. And then, but they're made with a model in mind or a person who's gonna wear them for that shoot in mind. And then they're kind of staged in this kind of elaborate wall-to-floor setup and then photographed. So in many ways, I think that the clothing the clothing for me functions in two ways in these moments. One, they become a part of this kind of photographic work, but then at the same time, they also function as object because I also see them as a work onto themselves, and from time to time, I'll include those objects either paired with other tapestries or they're just existing in an archive. And then recently I started making shoes for some of these scenarios. And yeah, I enjoy fashion. I enjoy fashion. But I just think it's such an incredibly I think it's an incredibly powerful tool that kind of, that we all in one way or another use to like cut through space, you know, to kind of cut our presence into space, whether we're thinking about it in a calculated way or not. And these are some of the considerations. So Nick, I'd like you to talk to us. The first time I ever heard you speak was in a really tiny town in Kentucky. It was like an hour or so away outside of Lexington. And when I introduced myself to you, you said, "Why are you here?" But I'm really interested but I'm really interested in hearing you talk. No, why am I here? Meaning, why am I in Kentucky? Yeah. But I'm interested in learning or hearing you talk a little bit more about your materials and the way that you decide on materials. Sometimes people give you things, but you never use those things, which becomes which suggests to me that the way that you decide on material could become incredibly personal. I don't know, and I'd love to hear you talk more about it.
Let's see, material. I think for me, it's, the most important thing is, what materials supports the idea. So if it's the fact of working clay, it's clay. If it's glass, it's glass. I don't really there are no boundaries there. And materials is very, I look at materials and that's one thing, but then the found object is another, but it is material too, but it's two different things. Which one do you want me to talk about?
I'd like you to talk about both of them.
So the found object is really crucial, and it's the instigator in all of my work. I don't know what that is. I don't know what I'm looking for, but this is how I do it. I will jump on a plane to Washington State, rent a cargo van, and I will then pull out my phone and then I will start antiquing flea markets and antique malls all the way back. So that's how I resource and do you want to go? That's how I go about it, and I just remain extremely open.
Does the hunt excite you?
Yeah, of course. It's it's hard work. People just assume that it's fun and you just out buying stuff, but it's hard work, and it's not hard work. And I try to stay in that space where it's not hard, because I don't want to think about anything, but it's always some outrageous, just crazy, 3-foot bunny that's day glow pink that I just come across, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's everything that I could possibly imagine. And it's really just an impulse, it's a feeling that I have. And then what I tend to do is that, you know, I have things that I have bought that I have no at this point do not know how they're going to sort of be employed in the work, but, and then I will take the object and start to sort of locate it around the body. So I'll just move it around my body, and at some point it just sort of stops, and that's where then the work begins.
It's kind of like when you buy clothes and then you don't wear them for a while and then it
I wear everything that I have. The stuff that I buy is not cheap, and I'm going to wear it. No, but you know, so I'm always sort of you know, right now I'm working on 2 new solo shows, and you know, I've really been thinking a lot about what's sort of been going on politically, and particularly around these monuments, and you know, again, just looking at that in relationship to black on black crime. And so what I've been collecting lately is carved bald eagles and busts of black people. And so I've been just, and you know, I'm thinking about this whole idea of land of the free, and questioning that, and so, you know, I'm putting these sort of objects together and coming up with the work. You know, that's for a show that's in September, which is all very, very dark. There's absolutely no color in the show, it's just all dark. Well, it is just because it has to be. You know, as I've been working on it, I'm like, oh, this is all dark, like, wow. So it's very, and then I'm also working on a show that opens in May, which is looking at post-trauma stress disorder within young black kids that are growing up in those communities that are, you know, constantly sort of just being ravaged with this sort of gun violence. And so looking at images of the brain and what that looks like, and comparing that with weather patterns. So I'm creating these 8-foot round paintings. So that's what's going on in my studio. But you know, material is, you know, it's everything. It has to deliver the message. And the large paintings are all sort of constructed out of pony beads and wire. And so that's what they're made, how they're made.
So, talking about new work, Ebony, do you want to talk a little bit about the work that you showed and unpack that a little bit for us?
Oh, the video? So the video is called 3 Kings Week, and the voice of the young person that you're hearing is a 14-year-old boy. The poem that's being read is a poem by Claude McKay called If We Must Die. Claude McKay was a Jamaican immigrant to the U.S. and was a seminal figure during the Harlem Renaissance. And the poem was written during the 1930s. And essentially the poem is a call to action, right? So it recognizes that death is imminent.
but if it's gonna happen, let it happen on our terms. And so it's a call to action. And it also acknowledges the way they're seen. Let us not die like hogs, right? So thinking about like the context within America during that time, the kind of racial stereotyping, the association with blackness or black people and animals. And this is not just in the US, this was, like a very common notion. You think about somebody, for example, like Sarachi Batman, who's been called the Hottentot Venus. The way her body was seen or understood, it was believed ethnographically that somehow she was a connection between the missing link between humans and animals. So this notion of black bodies being seen or being likened to animals is kind of mentioned in the way death happens in McKay's poem. But then on the end of it, towards the end of the poem, it says like, let us claim death since it is coming, and let us claim it with dignity. And so I made this work after there was an article that had come out or that was circulating on the internet, I think it was last year, and it was a research based study where they'd spoken to a number of doctors who were working at the University of Virginia and about how they treat patients of color. And the doctors all believed that patients of color felt little to no pain. This interview was carried out in 2015, 2014. So if you are in a field of care, right, what does it mean then to enter a room with predetermined expectations or notions or assumptions about what it means to deal with or to handle or to care for particular bodies? And if you believe that certain bodies do not experience something as basic as pain, then what does it mean in terms of the kind of care that you're going to give to that person? So strategically, I used these three young black male or black men as part of as the anchoring for the conversation, because one, men typically are not allowed to be seen as vulnerable, and the black male body, a black body is often seen as a weaponized body, but worse, a black male young body. In the beginning, at first I was gonna actually show the video where they were dressed. The idea was to work the video as them dressed and then revealing their vulnerability, but I thought it was way more powerful for them to confront the audience being vulnerable and then claiming their dignity even further by getting dressed and closing in that way. And then also to the use of the young boy, another vulnerable voice. The last body of work I had done before starting working on Three Kings was When They Grow Up, and it was all about looking at black children and just kind of thinking about black children experiencing things that all children experience, this idea of curiosity and play. But when we think about the way the media continually describes these, let's say for example in the case of all of the police shootings that have become really popular in the last couple of years in the US, when we think about say for example a case like Tamir Rice, who was a 12-year-old boy, and the language that was used to describe someone like Tamir, for example, and then we go a few years later and we think about the Olympics that just happened, and we think about Ryan Locke from the swim team who was 32, right? It was said, oh, they're just young, they're just kids having a good time when they went to, when they caused havoc in that, in the gas station. So I'm kind of thinking about how, the idea or the notion of innocence is not attributed to the very people who should have that, which is children, you know what I mean? But somehow it is attributed to another body that is not a child, right? And all because of the difference in shade, right? And then even if one were to look, say, for example, within the hierarchy of, like the hierarchy of colorism, like taking it further, looking at like black bodies that are lighter versus black bodies that are darker. There's also a different kind of language that even sits within the community around that too, right? So these are some of the things that I was thinking about when I was making this work.
Very. We're going to open it up to we've got some time for questions. As I'm looking, wondering if we have a wireless mic, and if some people go leave, I would like to also just give a little bit of timing. So we have about 10 minutes, and then at 9 o'clock at the at 199 at the Sunshine Eaters exhibition, that we will be doing a blessing by an Indigenous elder will be blessing the exhibition. I think that will be a really special moment, so I encourage you guys to make your way down there to that. Ryan, did you have a swear in first?
Is there a microphone or?
Yeah.
Hi, Nick and Ebony. Welcome to Indigenous territory. Toronto is shared territory of Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Huron-Wendat. Within the curatorial premise of the exhibition that Lisa mentioned, and I haven't seen the exhibition yet, but she references Alanisa's Obamsuin's Trick-or-Treating and the action of hope. Hope is something that we are tasked with within this country in an era of truth and reconciliation. There are many prospects to consider truth before reconciliation, and that is something that we're in a situation right now. So within the conversations that you presented, I'm wondering, how do you negotiate spectacle within the context of fashion and responsibility? Who are you responsible to, and what is your disruption?
You said the last part again, what is your?
Disruption. I'm just trying to I don't think, for me, I don't think that, I try not to sort of, I think disruption in my work is, it's the catalyst for me. But but I try to sort of use it as a form of device that unifies and brings community together, so that those conversations are had within that process of building work, and that when I leave and to continue with my life, that I have opened up doors and ways in which individuals can sort of continue to sort of stay relevant in this sort of, in that work. Just working together, getting us to work together is a big deal in getting us out of our silos and staying within these sort of boundaries. And how do we sort of do that and keep that act going so that we can continue to sort of help within the healing process.
So it's all happening. But for me, it's I want that to sort of come into play as we are letting our guards down and sharing.
So I use lots of like shiny things, lots of pretty things, very strategically, because I know that people will become like really seduced by the materiality, and it's a trap. I kind of describe it as like a peon flower syndrome. The bee doesn't know, the bee's attracted by the color, and it'll make a decision about how long it'll stay in there when it goes inside and tastes the nectar. So for me, I use beauty as a device to lure the viewer in. And then when the viewer is inside the work, then they have to make a decision about how much they want to still use the terms like, ooh, this is really pretty, this seems really happy. When they are recognizing the level of confrontation that's happening either with the figures in there or the moments of dismemberment that happen, like it's a little difficult to keep saying something's pretty. There's like holes through the face of a smiling child, and that's the jolt that I'm trying to go to happen. It's almost to like jerk you from that place of superficiality, because I think that's the way in which we kind of engage each other anyway, and it's part of the problem with the stereotyping, right? Or like a systemic problem that we kind of project us or make associations about each other based on those things. But what happens then if we're challenged to like think beyond the surface? And that's what I'm attempting to do. Pause is a word that I think about a lot. How can I give you pause?
And I think that we all have, we all come up with devices that can that we can use to manifest a larger form. We all come up with ways to strategize, ways of coming together. We have to.
This question is from Nick. Yes. First, I want to say that video of Ebony's was incredibly moving, and thank you for that. My question for Nick was that when I was looking at the video, I noticed the taping of the feet, and I'm aware that your sound suits are quite valuable. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about how you negotiate performing freely in such valuable works.
I don't really think about it in terms of I think there's a difference in, performance, sound suits, and what I consider sculptural works. It's a different way of making there's a lot that can't be done there's things I can't wear in terms of for performance due to the way in which things are designed, and so it really comes down to that. But the performance suits, you can do whatever you want in them. I don't make them with these limitations and sort of boundaries, because I'm not going to be able to get to what I need to get from them. So, I just it's two separate things. They're not, the performance suits are never for sale. But I'm thinking about that right now. Because I'm thinking about, what I've been thinking about lately is preservation, and I have some performance suits that are like 30 years old. So I'm thinking about preservation and how and thinking about new ways of building these sculptural works that are sort of built around preservation. And so I'm working on a number of experiments to sort of house, contain, conceal that sort of history and building through this building block sort of form.
So I think we will take one more question, and then we're going to have to, two. I see two. We'll do two, but we'll probably have to be quick and concise. The opening does start at 8 o'clock, and there will also be an opportunity for me to introduce the other artists that are able to be with us tonight and will be in the exhibition. So it is 8 o'clock now, so let's do your question and your question, and then we'll hopefully all of us, as many as possible, can join us at 199, and I'm going to put an image up with a map to the gallery. Would you like to go first? And then I'll pass it.
I guess my question was originally for Ebony, but I guess it applies to both of y'all. I think specifically thinking about
If we must die.
Specifically thinking about this video and what you were saying about how you were sort of like finding moments of femininity within like traditional representations of Black masculinity. I was gonna ask you how you feel about the term like the masculinization of the Black man, because I think that I think it's like a BS term, but I think that there's it might apply to your work because of how interested you are in sort of like softening up Black masculinity and showing Black masculinity with more nuance and like vulnerability. So is that something you consider in your work? Is that a critique that you're conscious of, or is it just?
I think that, so first off, I think that masculinity or ideas about gender have always been moving, but the problem is that popular culture for a long time has never really reflected that, and that's what I was trying to like unpack in the work. So like a lot of things that we associate now with the feminine were at one point masculine. So like if we think about medieval times, the idea of leggings, for example, was a very masculine thing to wear, but then you fast forward, say like, you fast forward several centuries later, it becomes not so okay, The earring, for example, was a masculine thing before it became a feminine thing. Or even when we think about it in terms of colors, like a lot of people don't know, like say for example, the color pink was actually a masculine color before it became feminine. So I think that there's a way historically that the ideas about what is masculine and what is feminine has always ebbed and flowed. And I think that there's always been kind of like this natural pushback, in terms of what that is, and then eventually it just becomes a part of the vernacular. I mean, we look at, like, say, for example, the 90s, the SAG, which was really, which was first popularized then, and then when it started to move into, like at the beginning of the 2000s, I'm thinking about more so like hip hop culture or so on. Like when it started to move into the beginning of the millennium, metrosexuality became really popular. The slim fit had already happened before the 90s, but somehow it became like contested because it had like a language of camp associated with it, right? And then now it's just like a matter of, like if I talk to any like kid who's coming out of high school, they're like, what do you mean? My pants have always been, like, of course it's okay for a dude to wear, but like, say some bunch of kids from my generation growing up in high school would like, what? No, that's too tight. That's a woman's pants. Which and this is the thing, is that when I think about like in the context of home, when these things were becoming popular, the men used to go to the women's section and buy the clothing, right? So that's the irony in it. So even though the fashion or the styles were moving forward, the language itself around that, around the ideas around gender, were not shifting at the same pace as the fashion was. So yeah, I am aware of that, and I do think that the idea of like demasculine or the feminizing of the black male body is total bullshit, in the same way that like there are these ideas or stereotypes associated with what it means to be feminine. Nothing is monolithic. So if we understand that, if we understand that that there is individuality in all experiences, and that somehow we can't assign one big label to it all, then it's the same for everything else, including blackness.
Right now it's just gender fluid and just go. I mean, I'm just like all about, like, when I see these students that are like in these universities, not even in art school, that are just gender fluid, and I'm just like, oh my God. I was like such a fucking mess back in the day. Because I was totally all about just being who I needed to be, but the space now is so extraordinary with the support of the schools and supporting that and really sort of getting behind individuals that this is who we have to be, and how do we sort of celebrate that. So it's great.
We're also in a moment where there's a generation that's forcing dialogues to happen in a way that our parents' generation weren't able to.
Yeah.
And that's also affecting the way things are being seen, understood, and reconsumed. It'll be really interesting to see how all of this, how all of it changes in like the next 10 years. Can't say 20 anymore because we're moving so quickly because of social media, but it'll be really interesting to see how it shifts again in 10 years.
Well, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. That and excitement. It's a real honor to have you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.